What's up, boys and girls? Will Hamilton here, bringing you this look at the Roger Federer Rafael Nadal French Open final. Now, I don't know about you, but I am super excited for this match. One of the biggest matches in a long time. First time in a while Federer and Rafa have played in a major final. And you can make the argument that if Federer wins this match, it's actually the biggest win of his career. So I'm super pumped. I actually have a flight tomorrow that I pushed back to make sure I could watch this entire match. I hope you guys are as excited as I am. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the tactics I expect to see in this match, specifically what Roger needs to do to beat Rafa. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to make my prediction on who I think is going to win. And, you know, really it's the fans who win, right? We're the winners when we get a good match like this. So I'm going to work in as many cliches as I can into this video as well, sports cliches, because, you know, with these videos, I really like to just give 110% and go the extra mile, really, and just leave it all on the field. So with that in mind, this is getting weird now, so I'm just going to start talking about tennis. All right, so what I want to do is first establish, you know, the main exchange between Rafa and Roger. And here, you know, circles player, stick is the side they're hitting on, forehand for a lefty, backhand for a righty up here. Really the exchange that Rafa uses to do so much damage against Fed is this cross-court forehand to backhand exchange here, right? So Rafa's lefty forehand is just, you know, bad news bears for Roger's one-handed backhand, righty one-handed backhand. So Federer obviously doesn't want to get into too many of these protracted exchanges. Obviously going to happen, but Federer wants to have as many opportunities as possible to go down the line with his backhand and either have Rafa go into the open court to his forehand, but more likely Rafa's going to come back down the line. They'll get a down the line backhand to backhand exchange. We'll talk about that in a second. Now, what I think is really important for Roger is essentially setting up opportunities to go down the line like this. So because of that, what I think is super important for Roger with his backhand is to actually kind of go down the line, or excuse me, cross court here like I've drawn it, but essentially in this area of the court where there's not a ton of angle. And typically when you go out, you know, you take lessons, the kind of the notion is, oh, well, you want to hit as cross court as possible, you know, get it over there. Well, against Rafa, if you do that, now you've opened up all sorts of angle for him to hit over here. So then Rafa would be able to pull Fed way off the court. And when you're over here, this down the line shot is super tough. It's already difficult here, but when you're over here, that's really hard, more likely to hit an error. And if you don't hit a great shot, there's just so much open court exposed now. You know, you're positioning here versus you're positioning there. Big difference. So it's really when Roger's trying to go line here, it's about hitting a shot that allows him to manage his court positioning, his lateral court positioning to some extent. Rafa can still generate some nice angle when he's here, but if Federer can hit a solid backhand and ideally push Rafa back off the baseline a little bit, because the further behind the baseline you get somebody, the less angle they can generate. So thanks 9th grade geometry for that lesson. But yeah, the further you get him back, the less angle Rafa can create. So if he goes here, then I think he's going to have more opportunities to redirect the ball down the line. And, you know, obviously he's going to lose most of these exchanges. This is just a bad situation for him. It's the reason Rafa is kind of Fed's kryptonite. But this will give him more opportunities to go line than if he goes cross court, and now Rafa really can hook him off the court. So that's what I think, first of all, is super important when you get these forehand to backhand exchanges from Roger's perspective. It's really managing a bad situation, getting the best of a bad situation. There's another cliche. I'm racking them up. So let's talk about this down the line exchange, because you've seen, which marker do I want? You've seen this a lot between these two. And there's a bit of a contrast with the down the line exchange between Rafa and Roger versus Rafa, and if we put Djokovic down here, because what Djokovic could do, Djokovic has a better backhand than Roger. When he got a ball that was a little bit short and he could step in, make contact here versus further behind the baseline, is he could really pop the ball into the open court, and now he's on offense because he's hit a really big shot at Rafa's forehand, and that's an effective play. So that was really, you know, one of the ways that Novak was able to beat Rafa. Fed can't do this. If Fed gets a ball that's a little short, he's not going to be able to really blast it over there. He might hit a couple that are real solid, but he's not going to be able to pull this off too frequently. Now that said, I do think the hitting to the open court with the backhand is an important play, because Rafa over here is going to be cheating over, and Rafa's going to be trying to turn this into a forehand. Now Rafa will certainly, when he gets forehands like this, Rafa will certainly send plenty to the open court, but he's also going to send that ball down the line, get it high to Fed's one-handed backhand, and then Fed's in a tricky situation. This is hard for him to put back down the line, so Fed would try and bring that cross-court, but it's hard to really hit a quality cross-court ball, so he might leave it hanging somewhere here, and then Rafa moves into the court, and he can, it's hammer time for Rafa in that case. So Fed's got to be, I think this shot over here, used selectively, is super important because it's going to keep Rafa honest. Rafa is not going to be able to cheat over as much if he knows Federer can hurt him going to the open court when he moves over a little bit. So that's what I think Fed should do with this down the line backhand to backhand exchange. Now, Fed, of course, is going to be trying to turn these into either inside out or inside in, which would be down the line here, forehands. And I think the main thing when Fed tries to go from neutral to offense is he really needs to, we talked about how against Djokovic, Federer needed to be patient. In other words, not immediately try and go on offense. He had to, he'd be happy to get into, if we had Novak up here, the backhand to backhand exchange like this, and kind of, wait it out and actually let Djokovic kind of come to him and be aggressive. That's not going to work against Rafa. Federer can't kind of get into a cat and mouse game. Basically what I'm trying to say is he has no kind of safe place. There's no neutral really in this matchup. So other than the down the line backhand to backhand exchange. So Fed is going to have to be a little bit more aggressive, but he has to be so careful, because if he's too aggressive and he's swinging too big, he's going to start making a lot of mistakes. And obviously then when he starts pressing a little bit, that gets him into trouble. So I think just the general principle I'm getting at here is when Roger gets those forehands here, or just any forehand when he's on offense, I don't think it makes sense for him to go for the outright winner, the huge shot. He's going to have to put together a series of big shots. So basically, Federer needs to play enough offense so that, let's say he hits a big forehand, the next shot that comes back still allows Federer to be on offense. So he needs to, what I'm trying to say is he needs to play big enough so that he stays on offense and he doesn't give Rafa an opportunity to neutralize, but he doesn't want to play so big and go for so much that the errors start creeping in, because then he's toast. It's a really, really delicate balancing act for Fed to handle. It's going to be really tough for him, and ultimately his ability to do that, I think, is going to be the key and a big decider in the outcome of this match. So we've talked about what's going to happen from a kind of baseline, rally standpoint. So let's talk about how the point actually starts, the serve and the return, because, we're going to see exchanges like this, like we just talked about, but Federer doesn't want to get anywhere near that. He wants to be, from the first ball, in control with the forehand ideally, and just keeping pressure on Rafa so that this scenario that we just talked about doesn't really play out too often. So I think with the serve, first of all, Federer served unbelievably well against Djokovic. He's going to have to do that as well against Rafa. His serve just has to be dialed in, hit his spots. And the interesting thing about Fed was the second serve, because he went for a lot in some big situations on that second serve. It was almost Sampras-esque how Sampras would dial up the second serve in big moments, and that was really obviously effective for Sampras. Federer executed that pretty well. So I thought that was interesting, because Djokovic was able to hurt him off of the return. Now Rafa's not going to be able to hurt Roger as much off of the return, and he stands a little bit further back to give himself some more time. So I think Roger, if he serves well, is certainly going to be able to be in the driver's seat from the first ball, which, like we talked about, has been super important. And interesting, I thought Fed would use the out wide serve a lot against Djokovic to get him off the court, but he mixed it up. He was all over the place. So I don't know. I think the key for Roger here is just to continue to mix it up. He serves so well. I don't think he changes anything. I just think he you know, keeps Rafa guessing off of the serve. And then when we talk about the return, this is basically, you know, the return is basically, I think, going to be the key to the match, and specifically the return over here, because Federer has a hard time breaking Rafa's serve. I think in the Wimbledon final, the most famous example, 2008, I think he was something like 1 for 13. Against Djokovic yesterday, he was, or the other day, he was, actually that is yesterday, today's Saturday. He was 4 for 25, which is about 16%. I did not do that in your head, in my head. How could I do it in your head? I didn't do it in my head. Used a calculator earlier. So the thing, you know, let's talk about Djokovic first, because when Rafa's serving to Djokovic, what Djokovic does is he stands in, he takes the ball early, and then he puts the ball here. You know, he sticks it. He hits a good shot, but he doesn't, you know, he doesn't like try and destroy the ball, but he hits a good shot here, and it's you know, it lands pretty deep, and that's really effective, even though you're hitting it right back at the server, because when somebody serves, they land somewhere here, and then they actually have to retreat to their preferred rally depth. So when you go right back at someone when you're returning and you hit a good ball, you've really taken away their time. They're not really positioned well. You got the ball at their feet, and they're going to be super uncomfortable. So Djokovic could go at the forehand of Rafa or the backhand, but either way it was effective, and it led to shots, and the subsequent it led to Rafa's shots being very attackable. So that was how Djokovic was able to get his teeth into many of Rafa's service games, particularly when he's looking at a second serve. Problem for Fed is he doesn't take balls early like this. That's not really his style. He doesn't really, you know, come over too much and stick it. I think he needs to do that. I think he will do it a lot more, but he does occasionally use that chip, which is not effective against Rafa at all, the cheese, as we said. By the way, I believe it was, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, shocker, Ciccio, C-I-C-C-I-O, EFIS pitch for the moon ball that I talked about in the previous video. I thought that was a pretty cool name. So there are a bunch of cool names, but that was the one that stood out. Apologies in advance if I mispronounced it, because I mispronounce everything. But so we've got this, you know, Fed's not going to be standing in here. He's going to be, and what he did against Djokovic and what he's probably going to do against Rafa is he kind of just drifts back, particularly on second serves, to give himself a lot of time. And when that happens, then obviously Rafa has time to back up as well, and he's going to be in a better position to really go after whatever Federer gives him. So, you know, I would say Federer needs to stand in and take it early, but I know he's not going to do that. So I hope I'm wrong, but you know, I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to back up, and then you know, what kind of return should he hit? I think he basically, you know, sticks with the same formula as Djokovic, going here, maybe a little bit more cross court, because Rafa serves really going to pull him off the court. So if you go cross court here, the down the line isn't quite as likely. So Rafa can still do it, but it's a little bit more difficult. So the shot's more likely to come back cross court. So I think, excuse me, I think Federer, by sending it a little bit more cross court than we would normally maybe advocate in a baseline rally, he's managing his court positioning a little bit better. But I think that, you know, it's going to be, I don't think Federer, there's no really magic bullet here for him to convert better on the break chances. And because most break chances are over here, and this is the side he's easily exploited on, he's just going to have a tough time. You know, you can go at the backhand over here, which is effective. Rafa does it. But when, you know, even if Fed's way behind the baseline returning this, his court positioning is so much better. He can hit it pretty much anywhere. And if he's way over here, then, you know, Rafa can hit into the open court pretty easily. And if Fed doesn't hit a great shot, then it's, you know, he's really in bad shape. So we'll see what happens here. I think Federer needs to, you know, if anything is going to really make the difference for Fed in this match, I think it's his return game. I think he just needs to get a lot of returns in play. He needs to do a good job of keeping him, getting him deep, so that Rafa, while he might be attacking, isn't really in the driver's seat. You know, maybe he's somewhere here hitting a shot versus inside the baseline. So it's it's that first ball, because this match is all about who's controlling the point from the first ball. Because if Federer gets into that backhand to forehand to backhand pattern rather, he's going to lose most of those points. So Federer on the serve needs to be in control. In the return, he needs to get as many returns in play, ideally aggressively, but as many returns in play because that's going to give him more opportunities, obviously, to win the point. More quality returns in play, let me put it that way. So with that in mind, that is my take on this match. Federer is going to have to play unbelievably well to win. He's going to have to, he played great defense against Djokovic, going side to side, just winning, some points with just kind of ridiculous shots and neutralizing extremely well. He's obviously going to have to do that against Rafa. The circumstances will be a little bit different. Again, he'll get run side to side by Rafa, but it's going to be more about playing D with Rafa's forehand into his backhand, getting it down the line, and so on. So that needs to be way up there. I mean, I think Federer's got it's a tall order, a big ask for Federer. My prediction on the match is Rafa in 4 sets. So I expect a very high level, but I think it's just going to be a little bit too difficult for Federer to pull off. But we will see in about 12 hours, something like that. I know it's 12 hours. I don't even have a watch on. That was kind of weird. Anyway, so please let me know what you think of the tactics, what you think you're going to see in the comments below. What's your prediction? And yeah, thanks for watching this video. I enjoyed putting it together for you, and I'm, like I said, really looking forward to the match starting very soon. So yeah, I will see you guys in the next video.